Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it another minute or two to let some more people file in. So just hold tight and we'll get started in a few minutes. Thanks. All right, good afternoon. I guess we'll get this started and if anybody joins in and we can fill them in. My name is Lance Ferrato, Director of Licensing and Code Enforcement. Also here is Alex Taylor. She's the Management Analyst for the Business License Department. We're here today to talk about nonprofit organizations and possible registration regulation. Glad to see so many people turning out here. As I noted in the chat a second ago, this is one of three meetings. We had one yesterday, last night, and then we'll have one on Thursday morning. All of the meetings are going to cover the same topics, the same discussion points. They will be up. They're being recorded, and they will be up on the website either later this week or early next week. So if you want to watch in on those and see if any other topics were broached or any other points were made, then that's a good idea. You can always you'll always be able to find that information there. So I have a quick presentation that I'm going to go through, and then after that, I'm going to leave it open for comments and questions, and then we will go from there. So, Alex, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so as I said, we're here for nonprofit registration discussions. I believe everyone in the room probably got the notice and understands why we're here and what we're after, but I'm gonna go through that a little bit. So, historically, this topic has come up many times. I've been at the city about 5 years, and it's come up multiple times throughout the years. But in April of this year, council specifically requested a presentation and discussion on the topic. Their main concerns surround planning review, zoning restrictions, and public safety. I'm going to get in a little bit more of the detail of that in a minute, but that's kind of what got us here. Based on that information or that direction, on June 11th, I brought a staff report back to council and just to talk about what exactly a nonprofit is, why they're exempt, how they're exempt, what would they like to see going forward. And as a result, they directed me to go conduct some community outreach and to try and get some language put together to bring back to them for discussion. At this point, that's all this is. This is just a discussion. We don't have any language drafted. We don't have any fee schedules of any sort. We don't have any sort of idea what would be charged, if anything. So the whole point of this is to get feedback from all of you so that I can bring that information back into them and have a more broad discussion. So obviously nonprofits you're all pretty familiar with, I believe, and they're obviously they're formed for a specific cause or a benefit to society, and a lot of times these fill the gaps that local government can't do. And because of that, they are exempt from business licensure or registration in many jurisdictions across the country. Specifically in Reno Municipal Code, the term business license does exempt organizations certified as tax exempt pursuant to 501(c)(3). Um, this is what our code says. It says that you do not have to have a license. We do have a voluntary registration process. Um, we we do have the ability to just inquire and ask if you would be willing to register. We don't necessarily go out and enforce it. We may go door knock sometimes and say, "Oh, is this a business that needs to be licensed?" And then we're informed that it's a registration, or that it's a nonprofit, and then we advise them we would like to see you register just so we have you on the books and we stop bothering you and we know where you're at. But it's not a requirement by any means. So that's part of the reason that council has brought this up. So as I mentioned, planning and development is one of the council's main concerns. Um, there have been instances since in the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years, where incompatible uses have been approved next door to each other. Specifically, there was a cannabis establishment that was approved, and it was unknown at the time that there was a rehab facility that was nearby. It has happened a couple times. I know a lot of people think that this is just a hypothetical, but it is real. Surveys are also difficult. We do have some language in Title 18 that requires surveys for things like packaged alcohol and cannabis and gaming. And it is difficult for people, including professional surveyors, to locate these buildings because a lot of times they go unmarked for good reason as well. They could be like a domestic abuse facility, something like that, they're not really advertising what they are. So it's important that when those surveys are doing that to try and to get to the bottom of every door, but sometimes it's very impractical for them. And then lastly, the existing buildings don't require an inspection if it's a nonprofit. When a business license comes in, we have the ability to take building department, fire, health department. They go in and inspect, make sure that the building is safe. Obviously, if it's a new build, all that stuff happens when the place is built and permitted. But if it's already existing, the city doesn't have an ability to make sure that that building is safe, or if there's been remodels or there've been changes. So when it's a nonprofit and we have no ability to go in, then it just goes inspected. And then just a quick fact about the Reno area. It's estimated that there's a little over 2,000 nonprofit organizations at this time, and the city only has 317 of those registered. That list may not be accurate because we don't have any contact with them once we register them. If they close down, we have no ability to require that they notify us. If they're not there anymore and we can't find them, maybe they just moved. So that 317 is ballpark, but that's what we have in the system. As far as other jurisdictions, some require it, some don't. I have come across many jurisdictions on the western side of the country that do require some sort of notification or registration or licensure. And if they do, almost all of them, the fees are minimal. But then again, some of the jurisdictions don't require anything at all. There are many jurisdictions that if there is a commercial location associated with the nonprofit, that they do require inspections for those safety purposes that I talked about a minute ago. So here's some discussion points, and I pulled these straight off the survey. I'll emphasize the survey a few times today, but we've created a survey on the website to try and capture the public feedback and opinion. And so I just kind of put these out here just to spark some conversation. Should they be required to register? If so, should a fee be applied, and should that fee be proportionate to the size of the NPO? Inspection fees, we talked a lot about that already. So if we do require a registration, should those inspection fees be imposed? And should they be imposed at the normal rate or at a reduced rate? A couple other points here. How do you think this would affect the ability of the NPOs to serve the community if there were a registration process instated? And if the city doesn't require it, how do you think it would impact the city's ability to plan effectively, given some of those examples that I've talked about? And lastly, if required to register, what sort of confidentiality should be afforded to those NPOs, other than what is prescribed specifically in state law? So I'll leave this up here, and Alex is going to copy this information along with the survey link into the chat so that everybody has that, and you can click on the website, click on the email. And like I said, I would really like if everybody could do that survey and pass it around as much as possible. We actually have a pretty good showing on that survey so far. I'm excited about the amount of feedback that's come in, but more is better. So we really appreciate that. And so I'm going to stop sharing this, and Alex will get that into the chat. And at this point, we're just going to have anybody who wants to participate, anyone wants to chime in, share some comments, ask some questions. If I can answer those questions, then I'm happy to give you as much information as possible. So just go ahead and raise your hand, and Alex will tell you when to unmute, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
All right. While we give everyone the opportunity to raise their hands, we did have a question in the chat, Lance. Joni wanted to know, how can we see the staff report you prepared?
Thanks, Joni. At this point, there is no staff report. If you'd like to see the staff report that I prepared for the June 11th meeting, you can find it through our website. If you go to business license or reno.gov/business license, and that link will be put in here. You can go in the middle of the page. There's a link to go to code updates, and then if you go to the nonprofit section of that page, you will see a link to I believe it was like item C3 on that agenda. There's a link on the page, and you can click and see that staff report and the meeting recording with City Council. As far as a future staff report, once that gets put together, I'm happy to share the when we decide or when we're able to get onto an agenda. I will let this group know, and anybody that's interested, any interested stakeholders that want to know about what's going on, I will let them know that this is available on the website, so that everyone has a chance to review it and then possibly show up at public comment. That's always very helpful to get get some comment right to the council members. So yeah.
Awesome. Amy, I have allowed you to speak. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi there. So I was in another meeting that ran late, so I just popped on a couple minutes ago. I'm sorry if you've already covered some of my question. And I will do the survey too. I'm trying to get up to speed with all of the work that you're doing. And I have to say that I really appreciate that you're taking a look at this. So I am currently I'm the founder and executive director of the Neighbor Network of Northern Nevada, and we serve 12 counties in Northern Nevada. And there has been some challenge with, while we are certified to provide in-home care services through disability services and certain state agencies, I've tried to enroll as a personal care agency as well through HCQC, which is under a different state agent, division and agency. And so it's been problematic because unlike some of the other certification processes we've gone through, they require a business license from the city, and they don't accept the exemption. And we go through the state, the silver flume. We're registered on the state level, and I absolutely appreciate the need for nonprofits to register with the city. I mean, it just makes sense that kind of who's doing business and the community, and for all of the rules and the regulations, and making sure that things are happening the way they should. I just have some concerns with the language that's currently in the codes right now because the nature of a nonprofit organization and to be a 501(c)(3) is that you can't have a designated owner, and you can't register a nonprofit entity under an individual's name. And so I was hoping there could be maybe a slightly different registration process for nonprofit organizations that allow us to register the business under the business name, but it's not, nobody's saying that they're specifically the owner, because we can't be. It's part of, it has to do a lot with liability, but it also has to do with the fact that no single person or persons can own or have that type of control over a nonprofit organization. So just hoping that maybe you could look at some of the terminology there. And then I think as far as the fiscal piece of it, similar to what the state does, we still have to register every year with our list of officers and directors and all that, but we do have a really um, reduced fee to do that. And it's not necessarily based on the nonprofit organization's annual operating budget. And I think that you want to be mindful of, nonprofit organizations, even like mine per se, we've 10 years old, we've grown, considerably. We're serving a lot of community members. And so our annual operating budget, increases every year, but that's not profit. The what we get in grant funds or what we contract to provide, it goes all back into our organization. So either, paying our staff or, covering costs and things. So it's not like we have this, huge profit margin where you can simply just look at our annual operating budget and go, oh, they can afford to pay this fee or whatever. So just keeping that in mind that our budget you can't really compare it to a for-profit entity because it's not really seen as this like huge revenue margin. So I think that there should maybe just be kind of like a standard rate for nonprofits that's reduced as far as what you would charge a for-profit entity. And then again, just looking at the terminology and understanding that you can't have a person or persons as the owner. And then I think that would be great if we could register. I think it'd help us get through some of the hoops with what we're dealing with trying to work with some of the other state agencies and enroll as, provide other services. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Those are a lot of good points there. Thank you very much.
All right, Joni, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the outreach to get our opinions on what's going on. There are many nonprofits who don't necessarily provide direct service that impact your zoning. Ours would be one. We're a relatively small nonprofit. We actually have no paid staff. And we're a scholarship program and we operate year round, but we don't have a physical spot. We have a post office box and we work at the schools and things like that. So we don't, I'm not sure why the need would be for a registration fee for a group like ours. I think what the previous speaker was saying about nonprofits and the amount of budget not being the same as what we would have the ability to pay is very valid. Certainly, if it's a small fee, I could see some advantage to at least knowing what kind of nonprofits are in the city and what kind of services are being provided. On the zoning, I understand the issue of people being next to each other that shouldn't be. But I think if we're going to be consistent in zoning and that kind of thing, we also need to be consistent across the board for other businesses in Reno and not make it seem like you're targeting nonprofits and zoning for those kinds of places that NIMBYs don't want anywhere near, even though it really is not a safety issue. So I think you have to be very careful not to be seen as targeting certain services. And that's all. And again, really appreciate your taking the time and on 3 different days at 3 different times to make it possible for people to provide input. That's really appreciated and noted.
Absolutely. Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate the comments.
All right. I'm gonna go through all the people who have their hands raised first before I go through the chat. So Erston, go ahead and unmute yourself. Looks like you unmuted yourself, but I can't hear you.
Okay, how do I do that?
You're all good now.
Okay, I'm the co-founder of Soulful Seeds, and like the last caller, we do not have a physical address. We have a post office box. And as an FYI, we have gardens around the community. One is on the NAMS campus, 3 acres. We have one by St. Mary's, and our focus really is providing healthy food to a wide population. So with no building address, no physical location, what could this process want to look at? For example, do you want to look at our numbers? Do you want to look at our organization? Do you want to attend our board meetings? Do you need an update? I have honestly no idea. And so, I mean, I just think that just makes us unique, as was the case with the past, with the prior caller. So I'm just curious.
Yeah,
What's
let me address that. And I meant to jump in at the end of the last comments and say that. But yeah, you made great points. I'm going to make sure that that information is very clear and that there are a numerous amount of nonprofits that do not have a commercial location where people come in and maybe you're operating out of a house, or like you said, just have a PO box, and then maybe you meet up at at a shared space every once in a while to have your board meetings and things. I'm going to make that very clear to council and try to explain that and try to find out for them what do they want to see from that, and do they maybe those entities aren't of particular interest. Maybe it's just the ones that have a physical presence. I'll definitely spell that out and make sure that that's communicated appropriately, because it makes perfect sense from what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Chip, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I actually have experience with two distinct nonprofits, one being a nonprofit affordable senior housing developer, and then the other being Sierra Nevada Community Aquatics, who came together to help the city build the Moana pool. And I don't want to repeat but I really do echo the differences and the unique situations where the standard process as it exists would be, challenging, the ownership being one of them. Amy, I think, mentioned that, and I agree 100% that were there to be some sort of a business license, and I almost think just expanding, and I don't know what your registration is. I guess that would be one of my questions. I just tried to look. I don't see where on the City of Reno site with a search I can register the nonprofits. We'd be happy to do that. That would accomplish some of what you're attempting to do. And I don't know what's contained in that, but I can't find a link to it with a search. You go to the business license and it should be a prominent thing there that register your nonprofit, even if it is voluntary. So perhaps just an enhancement of that process and requiring through there, and then having some kind of certification that you've completed that. But so the ownership issue, the lack of a physical office in one instance is the same. We don't have an office, and also just again the revenues. I think with the goals and the understanding of what you were trying to do, just a nominal straight fee to get, or preferably no fee. I mean, that we all are struggling with fees, but if the goal really is just to have the information to be sure that nothing is happening in planning and development, then a no fee or a nominal fee registration of some sort with obviously different criteria than for profits, just because of the wide variety of nonprofits that you're going to see.
Thanks for those comments, Chip. Yeah, you're right. The ability to register online could be a lot more prominent. That's something that we will definitely look into and put it out there to make sure that people are aware it's there.
Where just with all this communication going on about it, where is it? Or can you provide us a link in the chat of where?
I'll let Alex touch on that.
So we have our business licensing portal through onenv.us. I'm happy to put that in this chat here. But you create an account and then you basically register for it like you would a business license. Currently, our business licensing office reviews it to determine that it's provided the correct information to confirm nonprofit status, and then we issue license after any approvals need to go through. So
So
it's
but is that just your voluntary registry for? Okay, I'm going to go try to do it just because of, again, with all the conversations going on right now, just to see what it is you're gathering there. Because if it were, I don't know if it contains some of this information, basic information, where are you located? Do you have an office? What are you doing? That that sounds like that might be sufficient, but it lack of easy access to that. I mean, I'm familiar with the one licensing, and I do that for our operating properties that are leasing apartments, which is challenging there too, for the same reason that when it comes down to the ultimate ownership, it's flowing through to these nonprofits, and there's not really a way to reflect that. But anyway, I appreciate that. I'll go and try to do it just to as a learning experience, and maybe then being able to offer some additional insight after trying to go through that process.
Thanks, Chip. And if you have issues with that, or if you have questions about it, then you can definitely just reach out to us, either to Alex specifically, or our BL Code website, or our BL Code email that's also in the chat, I believe. If you can put that in there, Alex.
yes, and Chip, I do have your email address, so I'll reach out to you directly after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Connie, I have unmuted you. Go ahead and begin speaking.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. A couple things. I would be opposed to a business license. However, I see real value in if we had a registration page with the city of Reno that would be public so that we could register for a nominal fee, have our information on that page so that we see if we're duplicating efforts across the board. Because like you say, there's 2,000 of these nonprofits. However, I've often struggled with trying to get services for people. I'm with a nonprofit, House of Legacy, and but it would really be helpful. And I see a real value in having a database that everyone could go to and see all the others. And you could opt in or opt out of the public, portion of that. But I think it could help with duplication of effort and be a nice thing for Reno to have where we could go to one place and see all of them. So for that, I think a nominal fee for a registration would be awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Connie.
All right. Ersten, go ahead and begin speaking again. And
Example.
unmute yourself.
I
Perfect.
want to show an example of what we deal with the Nevada Department of Agriculture. We have an annual acknowledgement of what it is we do that would affect the Department of Agriculture. There is no cost for that. And so there's no, I mean, we do an annual renewal, but we don't have to pay for anything. We basically verify that we are in the same nonprofit status as we were the year before. I see that as being valuable if you want to have a database of what nonprofits exist, because through the course of the year, somebody might lose their nonprofit status or may close their operation. I am not high at all on charging any fee, considering what we are doing with the Department of Agriculture. They don't charge us for what we do. The bottom line is nonprofits provide value to the community that the community agencies do not normally have to pay for. And for that, they basically, I think they should just not charge anything. So I just wanted to share that for what it's worth. Having a database of who exists this year or the time frame that you're talking about, still viable, etc., I think that's good to know. But to go beyond that and charge fees, I think that's a problem.
Okay. Thanks for that feedback. That's good to know. Appreciate that.
All right. There are no other hands raised up currently. If you'd like to speak now, feel free to raise your hand. While I give you guys all the opportunity to do that, I'll go through the chat questions, Lance. Nicole asked, do you have a percentage for the registration fee?
And Nicole, sorry, just to be clear, are you saying like what the fee, how we would compute the fee or how we compute the fee? If you want to raise your hand and clarify, that's great, or write it in the chat, that's fine. Right now if correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, the registration fee is $25, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and that doesn't we don't do any there are no inspection fees or anything like that that get charged to that as well, right?
Correct.
Right. So the registration fee right now is completely voluntary and it's $25 per registration. If I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, just go ahead and pop in the chat and go from there.
All right. And then Gayleen asked, if things change and not-for-profits end up needing a business license, would it be for new businesses or existing ones?
Okay, so if something were to go forward, and I want to be clear on terminology. You can call it what you want, and I know I'll get arguments as far as like there's no difference between a business license and a registration. I think we'll call them registrations because it would be in the interest of creating a registry, fee or no fee. That's what we would call it. But aside from that, it would apply to anybody. And so going backward, it would apply to any person that or any organization that exists. And we would obviously have some sort of grandfathering period to go through there and collect this information, so that we could get everybody caught up. But yes, it would apply to everybody if we went forward.
Okay, let me find the next one. Sorry. Okay, Karen said, under this ordinance, could the city not approve an NPO's application/registration?
That's a good question. I don't foresee that being something. Other than it looks like we lost Alex there. Other than the city being able to require that you prove that you're a nonprofit, I think that would be the only thing that would hang that up. If somebody came in and said, "Yeah, I'm a nonprofit. I need to register. I don't need a business license." If they weren't able to, to prove that they were actually a nonprofit, that would be the only time that I think we wouldn't be able to approve it.
All right. And then Valerie asked, where would I go to find a synopsis of the changes proposed? Will this webinar be shared with participants?
Yeah. So we had a webinar yesterday, today, and Thursday, and all those are going to be up on the website, and you're going to be able to go back and rewatch them and share them or share the link as you see fit. So yes, that's something you'll be able to do. As far as proposed changes, we don't have any at this point. So once this period is over, and I believe we're going to keep the survey open probably for another week following this one, probably through the holiday, maybe even a little bit longer, just depending on what kind of response we get. If it continues to accumulate, we'll leave it open. Once I have that information, I'll compile a staff report, and that will be available to view on our website. And I will notify this group and all the others that are interested that we do have a staff report with information on what the public thought, possible language, possible ideas, and then we'll take that back to council for some direction. We won't just go back and introduce language. We will go back and discuss it with council first and see what what their desire is at that point. And then I would hope that anybody that was interested would participate in public comment and really share their feelings with them. And I think that's one of the best ways to be heard. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
All right. Jeremy asked, is there a public list of the nonprofits that have already done the voluntary registration?
We do have the ability to through public records requests, we do have the ability to pull that information to see who has a registration. There's it's not like on our website or anything like that, but if you were to do a public records request, we could provide the accounts or the locations that we have on registration at this time. Yes.
Awesome. And then Nicole stated, the Secretary of State's office provides a charitable registration statement for those that solicit charitable/tax deductible contributions. Have you thought about coordinating with the Secretary of State's office? There are also nonprofits who are not 501c3, but one of the many other 501c categories.
Yes, so I have spoken with the Secretary of State's office, and I have done a little bit of research and due diligence on the process at the state level. Yes, there are different types of 501(c)s, and not to say that the three is the only one that would be exempt from a license. That's probably a terminology thing in our code that we just need to straighten out. Obviously, for as far as charitable contributions, that not I guess there are different types of 501(c)s. Maybe not every nonprofit organization needs to be registered as with a charitable registration at the state level. So there are a lot of like specifics and particulars as we discussed, little the kind of entity you are, where you operate from, what sort of services you provide, all can get it can convolute this process. And so that's the whole point of this. I appreciate that comment. It just adds another wrinkle to the fold for us to look into as far as how we would be able to maintain this information and how we'd be able to, organize it and disseminate it when needed and really use it for the purpose intended. So thanks for that comment, Nicole.
Alrighty, and then a couple more. It looks like Carissa wanted to know, can you provide insight into how this would or could be enforced, or what compliance procedures other cities you looked into use?
Generally speaking, the enforcement process is very minimal in other jurisdictions that I've seen. It basically comes down to a volunteer basis, and that's where it's at. And I think that they try to do the best they can, but from the couple jurisdictions that we've really spoken to, they don't spend a lot of time searching them down. They try to maintain a list of what they can capture, but the enforcement process is tough because, like many people have said, fees are difficult, and we don't want to get in the issue, get in the realm of going out to nonprofits and issuing citations and fines when really all we want to do is get some information. So that whole enforcement process is definitely need to be, if it goes through, it would need to be vetted and make sure that we're not impacting anyone significantly with this kind of stuff. We want to make sure that we can get the information and not hold anybody hostage with a bunch of fines. So thanks for asking.
Okay, Kristen wanted to add a comment. Public records are a serious concern for confidential nonprofits. Please give consideration for exemption. And then Nicole said there are also federally chartered nonprofits like the American Red Cross. And final question here, it looks like from Jeremy asks, zoning seems to be the main issue council is considering. What else would this information be used for? What would be provided back to the nonprofits who register?
Yeah, so as far as what would be provided back to the registrants would be basically just it's something similar to a license, it would look like that. It would just be a registration, certificate of registration, just for your own records. And I think that maybe solves some of the speaker's problems of being able to prove registration with the local municipality. Some people don't have that issue. But yeah, the zoning is the main consideration. I can't see what else this information is really used for except for maintaining a registry. We have compliance officers that go out into the field, and a lot of times, if we have turnover or if we have people in your nonprofits move, just new employees at the city, we may go to a business and say like, "Hey, we think you need a business license." And they say, "No, we're a nonprofit organization." It's like, "Okay, would you like to register?" And if they say no, they don't want to register, then that information we try to maintain that documentation in our system, but it gets tricky, like I said, with turnover and just with people moving around. So we may end up going back again and they say like, "Hey, we already told you I was a nonprofit." So using that information for our database just to know that we know that business, quote business or nonprofit organization doesn't need a license, then that's what we maintain it for in there. So that's from the business licensing side. And then like we've talked about many times in this already, the planning side of it is just to where city development can occur, and if we have any distancing requirements from specific uses, that's what that gets used for.
Okay. Chris asked, would there be an exemption for NPOs with no brick and mortar location?
So at this point, like I said, we don't have any language. This question came up earlier today and last night, exactly, and I think there's some great points to be made about um, not having to register or not having any. You don't if you're not affecting any public zoning and you're not a commercial business that's allowing the public to come in, and there are safety concerns, then I think that there's a valid argument for that. So like I said before, I'm gonna take that fact and highlight that to the council and see exactly what they really need to um, what they really want to get after and what they want to see. So I appreciate that, Chris.
Alrighty, I don't have any other comments or any hands raised. If you'd like to have the opportunity to speak, please feel free to chat or raise your hand. All right, Lance, I don't see anything, so I think we can start wrapping this up.
Okay, so I'm just clicking on one more here. I got one more comment under that Q&A. It says, would assessing the state federal records database sort by zip code and possibly give you the same information? There are issues with that as well. A lot of these places, like you said, even if they do have commercial locations, they use a PO box or they use a home address. So yes, while that information does give us an idea of that there is a nonprofit in the city and what they might be providing, which is a great tool as well. As many of the commenters have said, it's nice to be able to see a wide, what the city has to offer. Although the addressing on the federal sites and the state sites, it doesn't always give us the exact location of the commercial location, and for good reason. As also mentioned, there's confidentiality concerns. Some of these places don't want people to know. They won't want to broadcast where they're at. So I totally understand that. But it does make those lists a little bit hard to lean on. So. Okay, well, seeing no more questions at the moment, I'd just like to reemphasize that we would love you to go take the survey and pass that around. And if you have comments, please, if you want to just elaborate and get on your email and send us a message, you can send it to blcode@reno.gov. And then and there's the survey. So if you go back up in the chat, Deanna, it was pasted at the very beginning of the chat, I believe. Maybe Alex, you can just paste it again so everyone has it at the bottom.
There you go.
And so there you have it. And if you can't get through there, you can always find it through our business licensing page, reno.gov/business licensing. And you have about 2 links, maybe 1 or 2 links after that to get to the survey. And if you have any questions, you can't find any of this information, or you just want to get more information, just let us know. Feel free to email. Alex and I are on that BO code email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Otherwise, we'll be doing this again Thursday at 9 a.m. And so if you want to join again, great. If not, you can always watch it back. So with that, I guess we'll call it a wrap. So thank you very much for everyone attending. Really appreciate it.